Titanfall 2 came out 10 years ago. Since then, the future of the series has been up in the air. But one thing is for sure, this game is held up and heralded as God's gift to the shooting genre. The thing is, I've never played it, and I'm not saying the internet's wrong, but when a majority of the comments on my Halo 3 video are praising it as the better game, you've got my attention now. So, 10 years after launch, I'll look to answer, has this game held up and worthy of this infamous notoriety? And then ask the real question, if it was so great, why hasn't there been a sequel? You need to understand, I'm not really a shooter guy. I typically lean towards RPGs, so in the mid-2010s when the first Titanfall dropped, and then 2 years later in 2016, Titanfall 2 released, it was sort of just passing minutia for me. And I want to be honest here, I know a lot of people are really into mech suits and big Gundam fighter-like vessels, but I always found it kind of goofy. But when every third comment on my Halo 3 Glaze videos talking about how Titanfall 2 is this GOAT contender for a full package game in the shooting genre, I just had to see what was being put in the same ballpark as my favorite game of all time. And spoiler alert, I wasn't expecting to experience one of the best campaign missions I've ever played. The shooting genre is muddied by multiplayer shooters putting out generic filler campaigns, but based on the comparisons, I've got high hopes going into this. We load in with a decent tutorial, going over the shooting, and more notably, the movement. If Titanfall's known for anything, it's the Titans of course, but also its push of the movement and mobility in the shooting genre. The movement just feels good. It's like they took 2008's Mirror's Edge and gave it a bit of the ODM gear from Attack on Titan. I may not be a shooter and I may not even be that good at the parkour, but that flow state where you can just hold momentum just tickles that little spot at the back of your brain in just the right way. So when the tutorial gives me a time trial to get to the finish line and take out the targets, I literally sink a whole hour into this. Did I get a good time after spending a whole hour in there? No, I did not. It's quite literally telling me I should be playing on easy or normal based on how bad the timing was. The tutorial closes prematurely as we are inbound for a drop. I'm just a soldier, but it seems my team lead is a Titan pilot and is training me up. I'm gonna be blunt here. A lot of the story and characters are generic, so be prepared for that. Our captain gets murdered by these mercs who ambush and kill our whole unit. Now, I want you to think about generic caricatures of villains. Did you maybe think of, I don't know, a brute hunter with a stereotypical South African accent, or maybe a generic German stand-in for Arnold in the 80s, or maybe just a super sleuthy assassin type? Well, guess what? This game has all of those and, well, more. These feel like at the start of some creative project, they were put as placeholders to then be fixed up at a later time, but then at the end, just leaving it since you're creatively wiped. But we are introduced to our main villain, the South African mercenary. For some reason, they didn't fully eliminate the Titan, and I get sworn in last minute as the newest Titan pilot on this avatar-ass planet. For the next 3 missions, the story stays generic as we assault the evil corporation, but I am enjoying my time with the experience as the movement and gunplay just feels good, running along walls and annihilating robots, dinos, and mercs. And then there's the Titan. You get various loadouts to just annihilate everyone. I'm gonna spoil this here and now, none of the bosses are really that challenging. I chose hard mode for the fun of it, so maybe I need to be on the hardest difficulty to actually see some form of challenge, as they are kind of cakewalks. And reminder, I am horrendous at shooters. Mission 2's most noteworthy aspect is that it features these annoying robots that chase you then explode. They really only stood out because my pulse quickened when I was getting swarmed by these assholes. Mission 3 gives us a pretty cool change to the structure as you ride a construction system and eventually have a boss fight on the finished creation. Like I said, I'm really enjoying the gameplay and the parkour elements, it's just nothing's really standing out in this campaign so far. But then I play Mission 4. I am not exaggerating when I say that this mission changed my opinion about this game. I keep notes when I play games to remind myself of my thoughts as I start carving out the script. And up until Mission 3, I was mentioning the interesting gameplay, but I was thinking the comments across the internet were probably being a little hyperbolic. But my notes for Mission 4, aptly titled Affecting Cause, start with, Whoa. This mission has us and our Titan BT checking out a research facility that has had a large disaster happen to it. BT can't come in due to size constraints, so it has our protagonist go in alone. For the previous 3 missions, the game has had us running and gunning, atypical action game setups and payoffs, but mission 4 goes into a more eerie aspect of exploring a ruin. This was my last mission for the day. It was late at night for me, and as I enter this building, there's a room full of corrupted, decaying robots slowly walking towards me, and when I shoot them, they continue crawling towards me. This is freaking me out. I'm a grade A wuss when it comes to this type of thing. Horror movies and scary games are not really something I even remotely participate in. So now I'm on edge. As we get deeper into this building, we are having recurring moments where we're warping through time to the past. At first, I thought this was the usual vision cliche moment, but on one of these visions I thought it'd be funny to shoot one of the guards, and he actually died. So now my brain is working to process what's happening, since most of my focus was on being slowly stalked by these Terminator-like robots. We come upon a man hanging from the ceiling, and we take this gizmo off his hand, and this is where the mission transcends. We can now freely hop between past and present. This allows for us to navigate the different obstacles by using a different opening in the past or present to progress, but it also makes the jump puzzles more interesting. For example, going through this fan shaft is impossible, but it's open in the present, and as I fall through it, I have to swap realities to safely make it to the bottom. I was intrigued by this game design twist, but the game didn't think stalking robots was creepy enough. See, there are these stalker raptor adjacent dinos that are the native fauna. We see them mission 1, but they aren't really a factor besides tutorial fodder. But change the setting to a ruin of a tech facility and have packs of them come out of air shafts and elevators, now you have a Jurassic Park homage. None of you of course would know this, but I have a father who loves Jurassic Park. So much so, he showed it to me at the age of like 6. Now, I wasn't one of those kids who adapts at an early age to this type of fear and finds this type of thing fun to watch. I went the opposite direction, in fact. So far in the opposite direction that, in fact, I have recurring nightmares of being chased by raptors 20 plus years later. So when I encounter a large push by forces in the past, overwhelmed by their numbers, I press the time change button and warp to the present for a breather. This is where I come face to face with a pack of these raptor analogs that are chasing me around this building that's very reminiscent of the one from Jurassic Park. I'm in pure fight or flight mode and instantly pop back to the past, where I get murked by guns instead. Now, I don't think that the average person was going to have the same visceral cortisol spiking reaction that I had underlying this whole mission, but from a game design, level setup, and gameplay perspective, this has to be one of the best campaign missions I have ever played. It takes the movement and combat strengths that this game has and adds this brilliant time perspective, which enhances both of these elements. I think besides maybe the lackluster story throughout the game, this mission feels flawless. I also thought it was a pretty cool revelation that all of this destruction from some past event was actually you using that device, which makes the title of the mission make a lot more sense. I haven't even mentioned the Titan section at the end and the striking visuals throughout, but specifically in the final moments of this mission, it really lands on a high. So when I said whoa in my notes, I wasn't exaggerating. This mission alone changed the outlook on this campaign and game as a whole. And if I'm gonna be honest, I don't think I slept for the next couple of hours because I think my nerves were a little fried. Day 2 started with me being excited for the rest of this campaign because the gameplay and experience was heightened so much in Mission 4. I can't wait to play this aspect more, but it seems they won't be using the time aspect anymore at all. They do play more with the environments, using cranes to move walls to make pathways available, and in one of the missions you get this tool that directly changes their position and more. It's a lot of fun when forced to use it in motion. Mission 5 definitely takes this play on environmental factors for the movement further, but doesn't hit nearly as hard as Mission 4. The next mission is straight up just an assault of the good Titans versus the bad ones, and it's the shortest mission by far. But it provides front-to-back Titan destruction fun, and by this point you have some pretty cool variable Titan loadouts. My favorite being the Ronin, which is a mobility shotgun build that's ultimate uses a blade that basically one-taps enemies. Mission 7 is a mission on airbuses and results in you and BT going down with the ship and being captured. The following mission starts with a bad guy not following the double tap rule once again, again, they leave us there to burn, but BT then gives me maybe the most powerful weapon in the game and his AI core. I didn't realize at the time that it was his core. I thought that BT was done for and that this was his sacrificial last act to make sure we didn't die. A noble and touching sacrifice. But no, BT is in this core and he gets a brand new body, but that's after we use this tracking pistol to absolutely decimate every worker and engineer in this building. So we're back in action. We take out the second in command pretty easily, and then as we're about to save the day by preventing this core from doing whatever it's supposed to do, our circuits get fried and the dude we have been chasing this whole time, for revenge mind you, is so impressed by our skills that instead of killing us, he invites us to his Apex Predators team. Hint for the later section of this video. We then have a moment where we actually need to neutralize the core, and BT throws us away as he jumps into the core. Seems pretty clear he died again to sacrifice himself for our well-being, but a final scene with a reacting pilot helmet suggests that may not be the case. I think if BT didn't make a sacrifice at the end of the previous mission, this probably would have hit a lot harder. But the back-to-back sacrifices kind of pad this impact. I will say though, this Titan AI has really grown on me. These characters have been the most cliche characters I think I've ever witnessed, but this bond between our main character and BT, this monotone, emotionless AI, has worked in the end. We get recurring dialogue options between Cooper and BT throughout that helps cement this growing bond, and I want to highlight that this game gives us the option between the cringe Ryan Reynolds humor and regular dialogue. Most games just kind of push that cringe humor in. This game at least gave us the option to not hear it, so props for that. But after 8 missions and a tutorial consisting of a somewhat mediocre story, with laughably stereotypical characters, bolstered by some of the best action gameplay and game design mixed into ever-changing level layouts and structures, with Mission 4 being the standout by far, I think it's time to probably hop into multiplayer, because I think it's safe to say that the quality of the campaign is super high. But if the multiplayer holds up, I could see why fans are rabid for more. As I've said 100 times, and I'll probably say 100 more, I wasn't blessed with a fast reaction time or really focused to have good aim and positioning. And because of this, I'm horrendous at multiplayer shooters. But if we extract the essence from what really makes Titanfall 2 great, it's movement and combat. The multiplayer should, in theory, play to its strengths, only missing out on the fun environmental puzzles that the campaign had. So going in blind, I just press play, and one of my biggest blockades presents itself. Turns out multiplayer from a game that was released 10 years ago usually won't hold the highest numbers this many years later. This is heightened even more when you factor in this game doesn't even have crossplay. So the PC, Xbox, and PlayStation gamers are divided amongst themselves. What this means is that, at least according to the Steam database charts, I'm playing in a pool of 1,100 to 2,000 players across a few different game modes. And this shows. My start matchmaking option has every variant as an option, so I should just look to fill any game, thus the fastest possible option. But my wait time between matches is 2 to 5 minutes, so we can see why this would probably make the experience more problematic. The multiplayer has the basics you would expect from any modern shooter: loadouts for skills, equipment, and guns. Because we are also facing Titans, you have to kind of plan around that. A majority of my games were in this standard attrition game mode, which has 2 teams facing off for points. While this is going on, you personally are gaining points to initiate your Titanfall, which is when you can enter your Titan. There are also varying levels of bots being deployed from both sides. They rank up from basic soldiers to mini Titans and scale accordingly on the points you net from them. This is basically Titanfall's equivalent to CSing. I will admit, I didn't realize there was bots initially and thought I was really frying in game 1. But then I figured it out a few minutes later and felt quite silly. I will say the first thing people will likely notice is how the movement comes into play in this multiplayer. In the campaign, you could play pretty motionless and slowly push up, not really having to engage with its movement until the environment parkour sections. But in multiplayer, other pilots are using this movement to a level that if you're just stationary, you're basically a fish in the barrel. So getting a handle of the fluid motion of the boosters, wall running, mixed with mantling, sliding, and the rope hook, you really start embracing your Attack on Titan movement. I never became elite, nor was I even really that good by any means. I could tell from that original agility course in the tutorial when I was struggling to get 50 seconds, but the NPC times were like 25 seconds. I just had a fundamental blockage in the part of the brain where this would have clicked. It's just the movement in these maps just feels good. The maps vary, but they all seem to acknowledge the verticality and speed that this baseline movement provides, and they are built accordingly. I think because I moved like a bot and didn't know the hot spots of the maps yet, this actually worked to my benefit in some matches, but these matches were a lot of fun. Time to kill is pretty quick, so a handle on movement is necessary, especially if you want to annoy an enemy Titan, as I got annihilated literally every time I interacted with one, except once where I was randomly flying through the air and hit one and was put into a finisher where I destroyed it, I think. The most disheartening aspect to this whole thing was that in the campaign, I felt unstoppable as a Titan. Ronin let me get behind the lines, blast a few, and then pull out my ultimate blade and annihilate the rest. In multiplayer, reality set in and my shotgun felt like a Nerf gun. I was constantly getting dismantled and my only Titan kills happened because I stole someone else's finisher. The game has a few other game modes, stuff you'd expect, a King of the Hill variant, a one life mode, pilot vs pilot, or Titan vs Titan, and other fun twists, but I primarily played attrition because I thought it would be the most new player friendly and have the fastest wait times. I do want to know that there was a wave defense mode, but I didn't test that since I got my fill of that game mode from Firefight in my last ODST video. I just want to say I really enjoyed my experience with this multiplayer in general. Once again, not a multiplayer guy, but its slight tweaks to movement and dynamics to the fight and its fun guns made it quite enjoyable. This is my first time playing with this level of speed in a multiplayer game besides maybe Apex Legends, so it's interesting to see what I presume inspired COD and other shooters to push towards other forms of movement in the mid-2010s. As I end this section, I have to ask myself, this was fun, the campaign was great, why hasn't there been a follow-up? Now, I don't personally think that a game that was released 10 years ago can be that shocked by its low current player count, especially when you factor in a lack of crossplay. But what you can be shocked about is why hasn't there been a follow-up? I agree with the masses. This campaign is excellent, and its multiplayer is super fun and provides a lot of variants that other successful multiplayer shooters do as well, but with their own specific twist on the genre to have a great market presence. Why hasn't there been anything Titanfall related since? This is where this video is going to veer left into a weird historical vector. Titanfall and Titanfall 2 were developed and released by Respawn. Respawn might sound familiar as it was founded in 2010 by the co-founders of Infinity Ward and the Call of Duty franchise in general. Due to some suspected nefarious business practices behind the scenes of Modern Warfare 2, they were fired by Activision, and Respawn was created a month later with 50+ members of their former team. Titanfall was bankrolled by their publisher, EA, and due to costly development, Titanfall 1 would have to sign an exclusivity deal with Xbox to have it come to fruition. In 2014, the game would release and receive broad fanfare and an 86 on Metacritic, which was relatively high for a multiplayer-only game, and would sell 10+ million copies in its lifetime, praised for its mobility and multiplayer innovation of the genre. Unfortunately, the game was plagued by hackers in its later years and was delisted at the end of 2021, so it was quite literally impossible for me to access it. As a multiplayer-only game, I wasn't missing too much story context. For most metrics, Respawn's first release was a success, but on the back end, they were having a retention problem. And the game's director was thinking it was a lack of a single-player campaign to really connect with the audience. It seems a lot of the devs were actually keen on expanding on the lore of Titanfall, and as of a few months after the release of Titanfall 1, production on its sequel, Titanfall 2, was in motion. It seems my notes on the distinct feeling mission to mission were somewhat warranted, as it seems there was a new methodology used going forward with the campaign, as there was teams dedicated to each individual mission, utilizing different game design methodologies and technologies. Mission 3 had a crazy design structure moving throughout this building that you had to fight around and maintain speed with throughout, with its final fight being the thing fully built out. Then the following mission, my favorite one, utilizes time as its main feature. These are distinctly different structures and tech that never get used again in the campaign. This team's structure and dedication for each mission worked as a strength to make the shooter campaign one of the strongest ones in the genre to date, and differentiated itself from others in the genre, who mass audiences typically attributed to being phoned in for a multiplayer release. We can see a little bit of irony here, as this is the team that created Call of Duty, but to be fair, they were out after Modern Warfare 2. And I think it's fair to say that franchise's campaigns since Modern Warfare 2 have become significantly more rocky. So using the money generated from Titanfall 1, we see the production and release of Titanfall 2 2 years later in 2016. It sold an estimated 4 million copies in its first 3 months, but would fall short of the EA internal 9 to 10 million forecast in the first year. Critically, this was received much better than the first, fourth with a score of 89. But because they were releasing on all platforms this time, this was seen as a slight failure because they weren't able to properly compete with the larger games in the genre. A lot of this failure is actually attributed to its launch timing, 1 week after Battlefield 1 and a week before the next COD. The cockiness to release in the same window as the biggest games in your genre is kind of wild. The team would lick their wounds and begin developing Titanfall 3. During the process, EA decided they didn't want to just publish for Respawn, but acquired them altogether at the end of 2017, and around that same time a new giant was set to release, and really kicked Titanfall 3's development in the shins. PUBG would release December 2017, and Respawn would begin adapting a BR mode into their Titanfall 3 build that was somewhat playable. The key issue Respawn had was that the campaign felt like a Titanfall 2 rehash, and they couldn't get around multiplayer issues from the previous game. But it seemed that for every one person that wanted to playtest the multiplayer, there was 10 people who wanted to playtest the Battle Royale. And thus, the pivot would be made. Titanfall 3 would be shelved, and Apex Legends would officially be put into development on the bones of what would have been Titanfall 3. Now, when I first read the headlines for this timeline, I thought this must have been an EA mandated order. For as long as I can remember, EA has been the enemy of the average consumer. Before every gaming company was trying to farm their audience for every penny they could, EA was making strides towards this shareholder first method in the early 2010s. So when I read that this wasn't an EA move, this really kicked myself in the shins this time. Turns out Respawn wasn't happy with the lack of wider success this title was getting, so moving towards this battle royale landscape was their new focus, and would only inform EA months after the decision with a built model to show. Apex Legends would strip away some of the mobility and Titans and replace them with comparable fluidity and hero abilities, and this game would see the success the studio was looking for. It was a free-to-play model we are now fully aware of that milked its audience. It would release February 2019 and would see 1 million players in 8 hours, 10 million in 3 days, and 25 million by the end of the week, with 2 million peak concurrent players. This bad boy would net just over $1 billion in revenue in its first 2 years, and that was just on skins and battle passes. So even if I'm to believe they weren't the cause of this initial shelving, it's not really a leap in logic to think that EA would want them to focus on the cash cow rather than the game that had a fraction of the global impact. I would like to note here that the games, to my shock and only realization after the card at the end, are set in the same universe. So it kind of lives on, it's just, missing 60% of what makes a Titanfall game unique. It seems there's been 4 more recorded attempts at different ventures back into Titanfall since then, but they've been stopped after a few months of development. Why does this matter? Well, as I've mentioned, Titanfall 2 is excellent. It seems the process to make it was in large part why the quality is quite superb. Maybe that's why the story is a little bit odd throughout. But a poor release window on a blooming new studio wanting to make a statement to the industry, and the viral success of Apex Legends built off the bones of the Titanfall series, mixed with probably EA's greed somewhere in there. This is why we haven't seen anything in 10 years for this franchise. There have been attempts, but all failed in early development. It's quite insane to me that a game that is praised across the internet cannot see a sequel. Okay, well, let's bring this all together now. Titanfall 2, 10 years after launch, what are my thoughts after being this late to the game? I think this game has an excellent campaign, which is odd since I still think its characters and story are for the most part cliché and kind of a generic action story but in this universe. But I think its combat and movement just make playing through them a joy in general. Now, stack that on top of the different design philosophies used for each mission, Respawn wanted to not have another generic shooter campaign, so they put specific focus on each mission to have it both not feel repetitive and to bring life to each new mission you entered. And I think it starts sort of slow, assimilating you to the universe and the world, but Mission 3 starts ramping up the wow factor of this campaign, and I think Mission 4 is a standout by far. The use of the environmental parkour mixed with the different periods of time to jump between makes the experience a joy, and mix an absurd fear of being chased by dinos, and I have one of my favorite missions in gaming. This mission was such a standout that the later missions that also veer in their own directions made me a little sad, as I love this puzzle aspect to solving the environmental blockades using this time variable. I said it outright, I'm not a fan of mechas. By Mission 1, I was on board with how overpowered they were, and the different loadouts that you slowly unlock make the experience somewhat fresh every time you enter your Titan. BT, your AI in the Titan, is a block of wood in regards to his personality, but by the end you do care for that robot. I just wish they separated his sacrifices a little bit more instead of in the same mission. I thought the campaign was excellent even with its generic story. I would have loved it to be a tad longer. A 6-hour campaign feels slightly on the low end, but at least it had one, unlike Titanfall 1. I played a decent bit of the multiplayer, but I was getting strong-arm bites long 2 to 5 minute matchmaking times, and that's with all of the game variants open as an option. It was mostly just attrition, but I had a lot of fun on it. The game has a super low population after 10 years and no crossplay, but when I got in, it was a blast. Even when I loaded in with sweats, there would always be a few shitters that I could farm, and I think because I was so new, my movement was so odd that the people just thought I was one of the bots and I'd get a few sweats back. This is a game that has incredible movement and fun combat mixed with its Titan gameplay, and you have a lot of fun. I think it's a shame this game's sequel seems to be eternally shelved. Apex Legends is quite literally dancing on its bones, and it at least seems from the outset that Apex's success as a cash cow and EA's constant budget cuts hitting some version of Titanfall 3's dev team are the reason why we may never see a sequel. 10 years later, I get the hype. I fully understand now why Titanfall 3's name is always thrown around when game announcement season is here. And honestly, this game holds up incredibly well for being 10 years since release. I guess it begs the question, if Titanfall 3 ever actually got the dev cycle it needed for a full game, would it hold up to its predecessor, or would it just be another failed victim to sequelitis? We're just gonna have to wait another 10 years to see, I guess. Thanks for watching. A like or hype goes a long way for my small channel in this unfriendly algorithm. Or consider subscribing or becoming a channel member to help support this video series and maybe get a few extra perks. My next video will be BioShock. This game is a Hall of Famer, but I have never played it because, quite frankly, I'm a wuss. I'm both excited and terrified. Check out my playlist for more videos like this, and until next time, my name is EasyBreak. Toodaloo.